I'm not knocking Christian. I am a Christian after all. The thing is that I am a Samoan.
Ang may missionary lako attitude nga, ele mas missionary ola. Pasyok Samoa. Honestly, yes, the Samoans have killed them.
It's time for us to make our own decisions. Take off Jehovah, put Tagaloa to replace him. What's wrong with that?
Tagaloa was defeated by one of the men named Lu.
I don't believe he's a god.
But the God of the Bible is the God of the Hebrews. Tagaloa is the God of the Polynesian people.
My friend Richard or Stephen Hawkins is saying, let's look for the answers, And what he's saying is that let's find out whether there is a God. What I find fascinating is the question that he poses. He says, there must be a beginning. And when you say there must be a beginning, you come back to the Aquinas point, There's a prime mover. Somebody, somewhere, made it, in order to exist. So what that is, whether you call it God or whatever, the fact is that when he says there has to be a beginning, and what he's searching for is who is the beginner?
Every culture has a beginning and a beginner. According to Samoan scholar and statesman Tuiatua, Tagaloa is Samoa's creator and progenitor. From him, all life forms issued. One story has an eternal Tagaloa existing in the illimitable void. Another, he was the offspring of a cosmic union. In the anthology Whispers and Vanities, Tuiatua argues Tagaloa is the same as God of Christianity. Others say he was an Aitu Tangata, or demigod. The last of the demigods was Tamawhainga. In the search for Tagaloa, I started at Whastouta Ana, where Tamawhainga was assassinated. Perhaps his death might reveal something about Tagaloa. While family Taulelea prepare a reunion feast, friends recount stories of the demigod. They say when London missionary John Williams arrived, my ancestor Malietovainglupo was in the middle of a war avenging Tamawhainga's death. What happened in our honor that day of August 24, 1830?
Kamaiki ki ngā whāngau o ngai koe inga.
Malietovainglupo, the man who accepted Christianity, also led the slaughter of the innocent. War, he told John Williams, was his great delight. When Williams asked him to end it, he replied, "If I leave the war unfinished and my enemies unsubdued, I should be degraded in the estimation of my countrymen." The man at Tamawhainga, a paramount chief, was assassinated, may have also encouraged retaliation. But Tamawhainga was more than just a paramount chief.
Mayo angin dia mengon kala ya yo la ko sin mo buanga le basa pa fira iko po a mai Tamawhainga ya ka wa kulo avana o facial ko mo me lau a ele mo me eu a ne facia po mo fusiero ro mo fusiero Tamawhainga kingi ai ai fa ko ko inga
Ike mi sa wele mo ma leu.
E saura e o fale kongol fale o kaupong. Ia e kami ngā lau o kalkalngoa ma momoe. E kami ngā langa e loa nei. Ia o so loa nei ri whapea la o le laua pae sa fusie le aori. O ngā la ne ngai loa e loa whasko o ngā kuanga o mai maunga soa. Sau le ri e. E a fungi wha a koa langa. Le a fungi le wha so o ngā langa pā le. Ko kasi a ko so o lon pā le ka o pā le so.
Iwa e whakua le kusol se laubiang sa usua kungi vasko.
Polygamy was normal, so Tamawhainga's quest for additional wives wasn't out of line. Filmmaker Ngalu Malemana shared, a man could take for a wife a female by employing the Samoan tactic tu'imamo, strike and carry. There's no account Tamawhainga used tu'imamo or violated marriage customs. So why would Samoans assassinate a man they considered demigod? Williams wrote, they appeared tired of his oppression and tyranny.
Puri loa e whasko. Puri loa koa I kai sami, maua. Ai langa suru I ngā re ia, maua koe loe kui umi mo, kak whasko o ia. Whasi e roi kai ngā. Ngā la iro pū ke re. I ngā ka o koe loa le ao re ri. Whasi e, lae o ngā kanyi la iro pū. Ka kipi ngi e. Whasko o kingo re o alonga.
Samoan folktales speak of mortals rising up to the gods. There's the Iti o Talanga who broke the god Mafuia's arm because Mafuia refused to share fire. Then there's Losi who overpowered the gods to get taro. Though this is a common theme in folktales, Samoans also revere the gods. Traces of this still prevail. When preparing taro leaves for Auluau, the Taulelea remove the tips of the leaves. One story has it, they reminded Samoans of the eel god, and Samoans will not eat anything that resemble their gods. An hour into our conversation, Leigh's granddaughter informed us that Taulelea were about to uncover the umu. They had luau, New Zealand mutton, taro and breadfruit. The only thing missing was the number 2. When Taulelea went out to get one, the entire litter had vanished. Anoa'i used the word Tapua Whanua. Tapua Whanua refers to a god or aitu, ghost, protecting the creatures. But the creatures too can sense danger and go into hiding. One may ask, aren't the aitu behind Tapua Whanua evil spirits?
So nga pisa o fia mo fe. Ni la fin la ku kiu le.
Pui.
Ku la we discipline la ku ka. Ni o I ku le dia. O la ku kiu yo la so ngi ba ingo.
Leo la.
Leo la ingo ma. Na la so ka isa so pisa o so nga fai me. Yo ngo ma. E ba ku le fo ma. We whanau ko kala mai mai. Ja meo lai. Ko fa ko ingo lo ma ko e rakso no pisa o mani ma fa wa ko ya.
A well-known class of aitu is the Insa, sacred ladies, seductive half-human spirits who are known to possess their human female rivals. They are connected with certain villages and pools. We came upon this one while searching for some Ayafis pool in Salikmore. It wasn't associated with the Tainasa, but it gave us a glimpse of pre-Christian Samoa. The victims' heads were hung from a V tree, according to our young informants, hence the name of the village, Levi. Decapitated bodies were set aside for the Maliatoa. Close by, a hall named Fatitu commemorates Maliatoa's son's offer to take the place of 2 young victims. The young man asked to be plated in a palm leaf and presented to his father as an offering instead. 2 days later, en route to the island of Savai'i, our ferry sailed past Manono, Tamawhainga's home. From here, Tamawhainga imposed a fishing restriction, tapu, on the people of Upolu. Though separated by water, the demigod knew when the tapu was broken and inflicted death on the offender. Was this another instance of a god refusing to share? or was it a tapu whanua, an atua or aitu, protecting the creatures? From Salirulanga, we drove west to Falealupo to see the god Moso's footprint. Falealupo is where the goddesses Taima and Tilafainga introduced the art of tattooing. It's also home to Pulotu, Samoa's underworld. According to oral tradition, the dead enter Pulotu through two whirlpools, one for high chiefs and the other for common folks. We stopped at the blowholes at Tanga, then bought fresh coconuts from a street vendor on the way out. Drive carefully, he cautioned. We have a tapu whanua. The atua of the road is watching. We caught the sunrise at Sapapali'i where John Williams landed. A monument to Williams stands here, another in Apia, and a third one in Leone Tutuila where the goddess Taima is still honored. In Sapapali'i, Chief Fawea exhorted Samoans to accept Christianity. Can the religion of these wonderful papalangis be anything but wise and good? Let us look at them and then look at ourselves. Their bodies are clothed all over with beautiful cloth, while we have nothing but a bandage of leaves. They have clothes upon their very feet, while ours are like the dogs. Based on material things, Fawea determined the god of the Palangi was superior than his. One might say Fawea was the first official missionary to Samoa, not Williams. Still, many Samoans hold the Englishman in high esteem. Others question his motives.
Bear in mind that when the Christians came to Samoa and to other places, they were part of the colonizing mission of the English, the French, the Germans, and whoever. Part of that colonizing mission is to destroy, the religion, the culture, the worldview, the sacred as understood by them, and replace them with the Christian vision.
Some argue the missionaries forced Samoans to accept the Christian vision. Anthropologist Lower Holmes, however, wrote, "Before a village joined the church, the chiefs met. Deliberations were lengthy and insightful," said Williams. He wrote he was impressed with Fawea's intelligence and good sense, especially when Fawea requested him not to begin his work among Samoans by condemning their canoe races, dances, and other amusements.
He was considered the wisest. Whaupuanga ngā whai i Samoa, who is not even e lei rope ngā onga i se mea. And yet he was wise enough to give that now. A waku lo waku, please awa eke. Awa eke whalea ngā inga wawe o lako ku. Ai e wawa ai se i o ngai loa. Ia ma o le mu foi ka ngaka. And in time they will change. They will see where Christianity is driving at. And then they will change accordingly.
Christian critics tend to amplify the so-called evils of Christianity. Regarding Oceania, scholar Viosoni Hereniko writes, the early missionaries imposed much of their own social, political, economic, moral, and sexual preferences and inhibitions upon indigenous peoples, including all those they encountered across Oceania. Another writes, Christianity also has a long history of suppressing women and repressing knowledge of the divine feminism. What would Samoan relationships be without Christianity?
Some people will still be more powerful than the rest of the people in Samoa. The men will continue to be the dominant figures in society. Christianity has given us a good path where we can identify that these are the men's roles, these are the women's roles. I mean, different groups of organizational groups of Samoa have their own roles to play.
We have seen the growth in our own membership is because we have praised the ministry of the Spirit in our services. We have shared a vision, and we have tackled the problems of the people they are facing according to the teachings of the scriptures.
Positive growth in Christian communities are often ignored by critics. One writes, if Samoa is to continue moving forward, she must confront and heal the wounds of the past, most notably the suppression of her indigenous traditions by Judeo-Christian missionaries. Another cried censorship and quotes a friend. The missionaries came with the Bible in one hand and a chisel in the other. Still others say the missionaries forced Samoans to accept Christianity.
I disagree. Because the mea leo le tapua inga o le whakuranga, that's something sacred lo langa o kaka Samoa. Ma o ke anga o mai missionary lako attitude nga, ele mas missionary ola. Fasioki Samoa.
If the Europeans go somewhere, everything within that culture is vacant. They have to be destroyed. Everything they bring must be forced on us. And that was not the case in Samoa.
Lea lai mori mau mai ai upo la aunga ko inga e oi kai ao makai ao fio Samoa. Lea se mea makau kia siri aku le mea lenga kupu inga ukau ngukana le. They came with a concept which is right in the heart of a Samoan life. Kapu inga. Kapu se mea sa. E oki a Samoa la kapu. Ngaka Samoa ka fika ngaka. Ka ngaka e. Oi ke sau e kau mele mea ngai ake. Oi. Nganga uko ako I fafu. Oi ngaka I olo pule.
To say that the Samoans were actually sort of cajoled or forced to, or under huge pressure to accept that would probably be a statement which underestimate the intelligence of the Samoan people who accepted Christianity. I mean, they, like any other human being anywhere in history, anywhere in the world, were confronted with different ideas and different ideologies, and they carefully weighed things up and say, okay, I'm going to make the decision to accept this. I mean, they came with the Bible, as Albert says, and a chisel. But our people decided whether to accept them or not.
But we can't also have a blind eye on the negative implications of how Christianity was brought and how people were brainwashed, things like that.
Samoans may have beaten their spears to pruning hooks with the arrival of Christianity, but Christians who carried the cross to other nations also bore the sword, and wherever that sword landed, it did much damage. Some of the evil deeds committed throughout history may have indeed been committed by Christians, say historian John Woodbridge. When that has happened, they've acted contrary to the teachings of Jesus.
Christianity was brought together with what they thought was civilization. Civilized, and the Western world was civilized, and so they brought the gospel as a form of civilization. It came with a Western flavor or a Western pot, just like a plant. Plant is the gospel, and then they planted it in a Western pot. And when they came to Samoa, it took a long time for them to take the plant off from the Western pot and planted it into the Samoan soil.
We are doing that as well, because that's what needs to be done. They gave that gospel in Samoan containers. Strategies for Samoa. And man, they criticize us over there too. Historians, Samoa, Papua. That's how, what are the strategies are going.
The missionaries may not have taken a whip to their Samoan proselytes, but some allege Williams bribed them with merchandise. The missionaries' own account contradicts the claim. When Chief Matatau promised he'll place his people under instruction in exchange for a missionary, Williams told him that any kind of cohesion to induce men to become Christians was contrary to the principles of Christianity.
The London Mission Society gave them a very clear directive. Tu wake ave le mission por karare. Pa ai polala ngani ula ya fi na fai mo fi on a receptive. Ya the locals ya to fa. Au ko ke mai loa try to ram things down their throat. but you gotta find a way where work together in a mission. But the culture like and that's exactly what the missions we did to Samoa.
There is something in the history of the church, historians, the weight of the will or Samoa of opinion, Samoan opinion. Olo inga kupul meranga is mission. I direct the meranga Samoa. Ele umia vai ko avel mission. E o mai mala ko malosi nga. Ai fa kau fo ye malosi fa Samoa. And usually all the force of Samoan reaction always win.
One scholar assumes the eradication of Samoan religion and culture, then poses the question, why were we so ready to teach our old beliefs? Indeed, Christianity spread quickly in Samoa, but not all Samoans readily teach their beliefs. Many resisted and in fact fought the converts. As for the Maliator, he accepted Christianity primarily because of a certain prophecy.
It was Maliator that did it. Maliator said before he died, "Now Samoa, I will take all the glory of a paramount chief down to my grave. But it doesn't let to it up. What is Samoa? Now let you all it on."
Intrigues me how our ancestors readily accepted Christianity, seeing that we had our own tapuinga. But if we remember, they arrived at a time when Samoa was at war. They've been at war for so many years. And I believe that in some of the writings they say that the warriors from both sides would come and eat together in the mornings. And then they would do some fear and stuff. And then they would each retreat to their side, wait a few minutes, and then start the war again. It tells some people that they were tired of the war. They wanted it to end. And so when Christianity came, it was like brought from heaven to stop this madness.
A Christian critic notes, the missionaries arrive uninvited. They assume the natives' traditional spirituality is defective, even devilish. In the process of trying to save the people, the missionaries wind up destroying them.
There was that classification of people, classification of cultures. This culture is superior, this culture is inferior. All those kinds of elements that came together with the gospel.
But the so-called colonial mentality is not limited to Europeans. Despite assertions that men and living things are equal under traditional beliefs, Samoans themselves admit their culture classifies people based on origin, family, rank, marital status, and even skin color.
Of course, we Samoans, we say we are not racist, but if you look at our language, the language tells you there are a lot of terms there that you sort of look at somebody with a racist viewpoint.
The Christian message of, everybody is equal before God was directly contradicted to the system that we had. When we have a very hierarchical system based on this chief and that chief and the historical origin of their titles and things like that.
Samoans may have called the Palangi sailing gods, but it's also revealing they were the first in the Pacific to fight for and win independence from the sailing gods. Almost a century after John Williams, one of Samoa's fathers demonstrated in the fight for independence what some consider a very Christian act. When members of the Mau came under Papalangi attack, Tupuata Masese stood in a line of fire and called for peace. A bullet struck him. On his deathbed, he appealed to his people. "My blood has been spilled for Samoa. I am proud to give it. Do not dream of avenging it, as it was spilled in maintaining peace." Historian Michael Field calls the moment perhaps the finest in the history of the Mau.
whalo alo le Samoa. Mo levang soif e o mai kala lewo levang soif o Samoa.
Some suggest Samoans didn't need Christianity. They were already a godly people. They possess alofa and fa'aloalo, love and respect. One maintains Christianity didn't alter those values. Not only did the Christians alter Samoan values and vice versa, they also altered lifestyle.
They encouraged farming, they encouraged the building of houses, they encouraged mass productions, things like that.
Some say the missionaries came to do good and they did well. But history also shows natives desired material things. Samoans were already selling and trading before the missionaries. Certain Melanesians take the desire for merchandise further with the so-called cargo cults. They appeal to the gods for European merchandise without the Europeans. When we criticize missionaries or Papalangi for destroying our culture and yet live and talk as Papalangi, are we not practicing a modern form of cargo cult?
Veru so ka Samoa ya songe. Polar ko inga fa mayama mai. Conservative firang. Singa vai er ke fongi da kai dum o ke fia fa ke fongi fa penga. Ka ngo kai maru mai fia fa sa pusa isa. Mai vai ku la ka usre ka ke fio usila. Values so po ai ko inga fa mai conservative male e vai do me o eu ke fio o fo. Ja me vai papo vai fia mu ka ko raki.
The Salfaya Fongapo seemed like a combination of the old and new. There was the usual blessing, the gathering of our roots, and the oratory. What's new were youngsters looming behind Matai with iPads and cell phones, and spectators volunteering advice. Listening to the exchanges, it struck me Matai were among the first missionaries to neighboring islands. Church historian Falto Esse writes that Williams asked for 9 volunteers. 34 stepped forward. Of the 12 selected, half were Matai. These men were hardly pushovers, said Pastor Etepati Panama. They were warriors, Toa, who gave up their clubs for a different kind of weapon. What of their ancestral Tagaloa and village idols? Why did they abandon them for the God of Christianity?
We didn't worship idols, but we worship the fish. Where I come from, we worship the shark. We worship the octopus. What does that mean? It means looking at the other creatures as gods.
Me ao in whangau whawhingi. O le kapu o inga lai e iai. E a fwoi e ngongofo ama, malau le i ingoa. O le ingoa ka urkai mi e whangau mai ai. That became the individual god o le kangaka. Like for example, you put individual god masangai or mole le le angai ever put individual god le nga malitoa.
We have a universal God, Tagaloa.
Ese Tagaloa langi male kultus kayo.
Yes. Eri whaia Tagaloa langi se kalaka. Aole kua kuspa inga, pa ia o ia whaia mea unga. Le langi malau langi, a kua markalaka. Au Tagaloa langi, ese markus pa ia. Langa ele o se a kua lau langi.
Tuyatua writes, Tagaloa was progenitor of all living things and with whom man shared divinity. All life forms are issues of Tagaloa, from the heavens, moon and stars through to the sea, the trees and land, and including all animals and mankind. Tagaloa is both male and female.
E amaka mai lava le te kalaanga o Samoa, fa me na usu le lai le masina. Usu papa maa ya papa alaha.
We are Samoa, people from the sun. We are Samoa, and our heritage lives on.
It's one of those creation stories with some substance in it. very deep philosophical expressions of how we look, how our ancestors look at the world around us. Yeah, but the creation story in the Bible is a very good one as well. Huh? How the Hebrew writers brought all those different stories from the Middle East and made such a very beautiful final composition.
There is more evidence of the Big Bang theory than the Adam and Eve theory. If you look at the science, there's a whole number of things where, life started from germs. Let's us. If you look at the story about the ilo.
Tagaloa had a fue, wild vine. And this wild vine, when Tagaloa put it down on the ground, there grew the maggots. So do you believe that we grew up of maggots?
You look at the pear. It's really the story of creation. All those Vaituli, it's about the plover that Tagaloa sent out. Let's look at the science of it. You start with the rock and the ashes, and then you have the thing about tapu. You come to the story of Tagaloa, sending out the tuli to discover these islands and to populate it, etc. The story of the tuli is still applicable today because you have the tuli, spawning in Siberia, and then coming out, to all these places. And the science is that tree life in these volcanic islands was through the birds. There's much in the science that supports our theory of creation. Not that I'm saying that I'm knocking the whole Bible. I'm saying that God spoke to the Hebrews and God spoke to our parents.
If God spoke to both the Hebrews and the Samoans, why would he give them conflicting stories? Tuyatua writes, in the Samoan creation myth, there is no Adam and Eve, no Eden or tempting snake. Earth and all living organisms, including humans, originated from a Big Bang, the tumultuous separation of Flangi, heaven, and Papa, rock. The Bible speaks of an infinite God who formed the earth at his command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. In Samoan mythology, Tagaloa, the creator of all living things, was himself created.
Kulai medis Tagaloa. Se kau mai ka kai ngo ia Tagaloa fakupungu. Fakupungu le sanga fakukupuinga ia moku ngel Pasifika.
If Tagaloa has a beginning, is he mortal?
I don't think he was mortal. It would have been very controversial if he was.
Why is that?
You cannot justify your ancestry and say that it's holy if you supernatural if you attribute it to somebody who is immortal.
Ai au mai foi la le kua le whaka au komerikala le dei. Makanto ni Samoa. Asal, e kusa lea mo kongo Samoa ya Tagaloa lang. Pe asal, e mai kere ka kusui lo. Ayo, o Tagaloa le ole kua le lo lang yako.
I have a problem with that because the God of the Bible is the God of the Hebrews. Tagaloa is the God of the Polynesian people. But they are both, what I mean is that the idea of a universal God is the same. But the God of the Bible is the God of the Jewish people. But Tagaloa is the God of the Samoan. We can't say that they are the same, but the idea is the same.
Idea of God is the same everywhere. It doesn't really matter which society you're talking about, whether it's traditional or non-traditional or pre-Christian or post-Christian. The concept of God is somebody or a person to whom all the unanswerable questions are referred to for explanations.
E leo se kua Tagaloa.
I pos ka malo singa kai mi pe wai fo mai ele ku malo mangu yang ka ule la ko ia fa pe ngalo ole la ko
Nga me wai pe ka ka ilu ma pau e a o ai me ko tau me va apulala.
Samoan concept of people with power also exists in other cultures. Researcher Pody Hodge found a real Hercules in Greek genealogy who was later mythologized into a god. Confucius was a person of antiquity elevated to god-like status. The same is true of Jupiter, Thor, Cronus, and Poseidon. Tagaloa had been a person of great note whom ancient Samoans later elevated to god. But Pali shares an alternate view of Tagaloa based on how certain beings were traditionally thought to have been conceived.
Sungale iku kengele nga mau mai el kap a coast. Lela mau werka ka iku. Like ngawai ka mi pe ola inga sa Tagaloa mo oi yo kaksam.
Ye ka upo ye isi o leiku sawali I po leiku ese fa pena. E ese mai ai lo ka ngaka ye ka ko.
Ese Tagaloa lang na le focus pa yo.
Yo, Tagaloa lang ile nga mo ni mau foi nga le kuspa ia. Ore ko ke le nga mo ni mau nga upu mana.
Ele I kala I lo ai ia Tagaloa. We had no records of how he relates to people.
There are lots of theological students here in Samoa and throughout the Pacific who are trying to bring in Tagaloa as part of the current worship. You referred to Tuiatua saying that Tagaloa is the same as our God now. To me, that's an exercise in joining the dots, trying to rationalize and make sense of what we have now.
I say no to that.
Ese ale kua le. Sa ia le kua. Sa I fo ye ka ka le kua. Ai le o Tagaloa. Tagaloa le ma fa le fa lo kom fa fo mai. Pingi ai lu fo se ku Tagaloa lang.
Lu had a flock of chickens. And then Tagaloa Langi wanted to eat the chickens. So he sent his young men to catch the chickens of Lu. And then Lu was a warrior. So he was so mad when he learned that Tagaloa and his men had killed his chickens. Lu decided to fight Tagaloa and his men because he was mad. They were going to punish Tagaloa.
E fez que mo sa wele ko fi ai se Moses.
When Tagaloa's daughter named Langi Tuaiva or Leamoa, her other name is Leamoa. So when she realized and she learned that Lu and his men are coming to fight her father, she used her role as a Tamaitai Samoa. Tamaitai Samoa, she is the savior of the family. That's why the Samoan ladies are called Tausala, because e tau ia le sala le aima. She offered herself to Lu. Well, excuse the language, but she laid down on the way where Lu was coming. She laid down there naked. Why? Because she was offering herself to Lu by saying, instead of saying, Lu, do whatever you want with me, don't touch my father.
Le tua ia o le nganga. Pei o Tagaloa lang. E fio le lang i le ropo fea, mai isi lang kua iwa lang kusifu.
What we call the ninth heavens, the heavens are the mountains over at Whangaloa.
Ai o iwa whako, mai vai nei kumkumu o maunga. E alu whapea kumkumu o maunga, langi kua kasi. Sa ngofo si o ngai, langi kua lua, o luke kumkumu o le maunga, langi kua ko. Se yo langi kua iwa.
And they believe that on the ninth one, Tagaloa lived there.
That's not heaven. Or cloud 9.
The gods are said to dwell on mountains. God of the Bible met with his people on certain mountains. Evidence that strongly suggests myths such as Tagaloa came from the Hebrew account rather than the other way around. What is the name Tagaloa Langi? Does it provide a clue to his identity?
The meaning of the word Tagaloa is endless freedom.
Le upu langi, e fio oe le kua I lo langi. Ia oe le kua soifua e whaavavau. O le upu whaavavau, po le vavau. E kusa ma le upu le whaasamoanga mua le loa.
If Tagaloa dwells in heaven and is God of the Bible, why isn't he mentioned in Samoan worship?
He's dead already. They killed him. The missionaries. No, not dead in the sense of dying like a mortal God, but in the sense of planting the God of the Bible and teaching the Samoan people to get rid of all the other gods. But there is a way that we can go back and say, put Tagaloa in the Bible. Take off Jehovah. Put Tagaloa to replace him. What's wrong with that?
One problem is, replacing Yahweh with Tagaloa violates both the Bible and Samoan oral tradition. Some insist the differences between the two are irrelevant, since Samoans were already a godly people who practiced love, alofa, long before the missionaries.
Pia la kalango le upu alofa. Kuso le vaenga le kala le sa ia ka Samoa mua. Ai lau ki le iloa. Sa la ko ilo fo ia ile ko le ka o kanga lo langi. Ai le fa penga makua I malama pe o malama le o ia yong ponge. Inga wo merkala le. Le ko le sa fa ngefu. Le sa ka make ka male mangingo I mafau ka Samoa mua. Le sa la ko fa pe kanga lo langi.
O ngā kangaloa ngai le amakanga, sa lako iloa le ku. Pia koe ngā me fo e halua wa kula I maisi kangaloa, turn into cannibals, and we were wale I whasosolo mea, mamao e se ia male aku.
In an effort by the missionaries to sort of, look at the pre-Christian time as a time of darkness. And therefore, whatever you worshipped were Itu. And the only true God was the Atua that they brought with them. But now we are trying to bridge that by saying Atua also refers to Tagaloa.
One way to bridge Christianity and Samoan ancient belief is to keep both equal standing under any number of worldviews. Another is to marry the two under a process called syncretism.
How do I blend? How do I marry, my Samoanness with my Christianity? Because both of them are divinely inspired. And when you come down to the Tintac, you will find that there's no disconnect, that they're one and the same thing.
That's why it's very important that the great minds of theology, Samoans, must come together and find a theology that's born, that's screaming out of our legends and our history.
Tagaloa then be Jehovah and then be Jesus at the same time. If we go for the Greek understanding of things, but we have our own Samoan ways of doing it. The Genesis account of the creation and the making of man is the product of many stories. Mesopotamian stories, Babylonian stories, Assyrian stories. They were all refined and collected by the Hebrew writers and then made this final story their own story.
The Hebrews have got the advantage, because, they've had thousands of years to develop their theology, their whatever it is, and some of the best minds in the world have focused on it. We're coming into this thing rather late in the piece.
According to Maulolo, the blending of Christianity and Samoan culture began with the translation of the Bible.
The role that Jesus was playing was like an orator. Ahora le vele fio ya Yesu. La le mau aku pere ku mai kosa Yesu le alo le a vele fio le tu tisi lese. O mai la o le nga lue fakula fale. Associate loa. Upu ya ave ngana sa moa ile tula fale. Ua tu ya Yesu. Ona maliu wane ai le o ia I Kapanau. Le upu maliu e ave tula fale. Ona feta lai mai le o Yesu. Yere mau al kuspa ia le fakasa fa pe mai. Ona sa no mai le o Yesu po umalele mai Yesu. No. Ona feta lai mai le o Yesu. Le upu feta lai ave kula fale le vese kamari.
We can say that Jesus Christ has a tattoo just to indicate his service and his tautua to his Father in heaven. And in the Samoan context, well, that is like the duty of the young man with the somaimiti.
The tattoo is ole la'e or Samoa, and on that la'e is written every intricate, little important icon of Samoa.
Kakau is the rite of initiation into manhood, is for Samoa. Can we use that as the rite of initiation into the church?
The Roman Church leads the way in utilizing traditions in worship outside the church and all ritual beckons, the Sa'e dance.
Afaingela wala salesia le fapia. Na so tuia I lalo pa au kelale. Ya onga pire ko inga ko kongole. Ya ngo sprinkle le dunga franga le ia fapia nga. Le la ko kupu merka nga.
Because God is family. You are taunting God in that thing. You're saying, okay, fair enough, you've taken one of them. Yeah, but so long as I have my penis, I can still make another person. It's rather a gauche or a rough way of saying, look, notwithstanding that you can take life away, I too share divinity. I can make life.
There are traditions many feel should remain in the past.
Reform. That was one of them.
When I was young, I've seen groups of men from one village coming to our village. So afterwards, after their entertainment here, they would run away with some of the girls of my village. Or the women from another village came to, they were performing concerts, and at the end, they were running away with the men of my village. But these men have their wives and children.
Would we want our daughters to be like that?
The same concern is raised about nakedness. Some feel it was a natural thing until the missionaries came. Tuiatua writes the guilt and shame surrounding nakedness and sexuality is endemic to Christian rather than indigenous culture.
Waila mol me o le tea flower. Me kam fai ngang fai. Wai kapua le Christians.
Afa pela o le asole al fa poiponga. Ia ko mai mo le ainga ngo fo mai si I ko a ko le fola. Yo nga lai fa ki ngoi fo fa. Le la wo mai lo le le mo le pungi po se sia pokele fo le e ka ka ure si kala fa. Ko mo pola. O nga la sa mai le kengi le la sa ungi fai poi. E ye ku la fale. E fusilo ngali mai le lau. O ia nga ke fa masei a winga. Ia le ka mai kai.
Ia va bela o kengi wa kom foi ai nga ave mal ka mo ko mo ngale kapi.
Fa singa nga koko du ngole. O le ie por sia pole. E mai fa ari mai du mo ka ngi ka po.
Ia paki lo ka ke lo ka lai lo ke ngi wele I ya si o nga winga makanga kipi o mai Christians le telefo yo me pela me ne fa sa langa I tonu no e tate ofo fo I ia taimi mai taimi ya ile mafatianga o la faile ainga ma upu matai fai le tangata ma le matai o la fa te amalonai
e ia fa sa langa mi kwale ia se alo
Kafi malelau, laki malelau. Aki malauro kan kau le so mo.
O mea ma le ainga ia po le wafanga manga me pe ai alu mai lunga le koe se me ko.
The missionaries that utilize certain traditions. One of them is ifonga, a public ceremonial request for forgiveness.
Na Samoa le tunu ese. E mangalo le anga sala piklo I makautia o fashoka ngaka. E mangalo le laungo le ifonga. Tokyo mai o ko le ainga fashoka ngaka. Ai o to mai fai de ifonga. O le mea makautia langa nua Samoa. E au to e anga sala. Ai ko ke o papa o ko pasi mo lori faoso. Povi. Pua. I konga. La ume la inga.
But not all ifonga end well. And if Tagaloa had no written moral codes, what guided pre-Christian Samoans? The missionaries answer, in the beginning, God created man in his image. He also set eternity in man's heart, so that man knows instinctively what's good and what's evil. Christian author Robert Godfrey notes, God has so deeply planted the need for himself in human beings that when we do not know the true God, we invent false gods, false religion, and false worship.
Ngai le Tagaloa langi le sa tapu ai tātou tu a yaso anu.
Sa ole o tangata le lewa ma taimina le I loa le tātou le malama I nā vai tāu a.
E ku kusa ia Tagaloa langi ma ku le ku kuspa ia.
Ese wa ese ale le kingo kaka ia ese fole le wale ka pai le Samoa.
Wo fa longo so I kala ke le uru malama ke le ai.
Those people that think that Tagaloa is the God of Samoa should now believe that their belief of Tagaloa should be realized as their belief of Jesus Christ. Because Tagaloa didn't die on behalf of us.
It's only the Jesus believers that need to be saved because they have this Jesus that saves. The God and the faith that I have, I don't need a savior. I was born into this world as a part of this world. The little air that I breathe in and breathe out that's the little air that's going to put life in some little plant somewhere. And so when we all come together and breathe out the same, we're going to bring a forest together. And this is a part that I play and we all play in this.
O manatu tangata wa Samoa. O yel tala leila fonu Samoa. But I guarantee as a whaiwheau, ili ia o Samoa.
But Pastor Tino also knows Samoa has beautiful tradition including respect, love for family and service, tautua with a smile. Wherever they go, Samoans live as Samoans. Traditions help them adapt to new lifestyles and guarantee support in time of crisis. Fa'alavilave. Samoan children learn language and culture in school. But what will become of their generation when they're also taught that man or culture is a measure of all things? Or that the Christian faith of their parents is part of Western colonialism and the God of Samoa is really Tagaloa? The search for Tagaloa brought me back to Tamawhainga. He was worshipped as a god, until the people, tired of his tyranny, assassinated him. Is Tamawhainga the key to unlocking Tagaloa's identity? When looking at different belief systems, common elements emerge. One of the most prominent is they incorporate ancestral worship. Once upon a time, was Tagaloa a mighty man like Tamawhainga, who was later elevated to God? A Samoan tradition sheds some light.
Samoa that they bury their people in front of the house. He mafua tutununga o Samoa. Auki ka ngaka e ola longa mauti. Le mafua ina faile mea tau le fono maitu. Na ka makukua rungu e fongo. Fongo na kasika mai mori pui ki lawe whapulo le kingipu. And the whole purpose of the fono nga, and the fono maitu, like a kalola ko mauri, the spirits of the dead. Halo fa mai le nu. Wei fa fi kauti. Mea fola na, hao inga vevesi o isi ko inga. Nga wale ngo fongo rungu kunga mau. They're trying to make connection. Yo lak tu tangata. Manganga. Oe wo mari diu.
If the missionaries had not brought Christianity, would the Samoans still have their Tagaloa worship?
It's most likely that another religion would have taken over. just looking at the way the world operates.
Over our ancestral.
Oh yes, yeah.
Doesn't sound like our forefathers were strong enough to hold on to their worship.
No, I said before that they were very acute observers of what was good for them and what was bad for them and what was beneficial for them. We can just judge now that they did the wrong thing 200 years ago. But I think to some extent that's unfair. And sort of more or less saying that they were not intelligent enough to make the decisions that they made. It's easy to do that in retrospect.
This is my dilemma. There's always the tendency for people to try and impose an absolute. Life changes. You can't compare the lives of our parents or our grandparents to the lives that we live. And the fact that we live different lives, it creates its own environment, its own paradigms, its own idiom, its own idiosyncrasies. And therefore, you have to re-examine the ambience in which we live in order to find our bearings. Where is, the truth? We can't stay with a paradigm that may be applicable 20, 50, 100 years ago and say, that is the absolute, that is the truth. That's not possible.
Life changes. So Samoan folk wisdom advises, o le fuata malona lo, a breadful pole for every season. When I set out on the search for Tagaloa, it was to look at what I thought was revisionism and intellectual dishonesty in much of today's liberal writings. Though I disagree with His Highness and his friends, his character revealed much that is good in Samoan culture. He exuded the warmth and kindness Samoan culture is known for. Williams himself was impressed with Samoan hospitality. He raved about Samoan nobleness of feeling that gave him an exalted idea of Samoan character. He also believed Samoan religion and culture, like others, may be similar in some ways to Christianity, but it is not Christianity, and it is not redemptive. Still, being a Christian doesn't mean abandoning our Samoanness. It means creating cultures that honor God and benefit others. That's the essence of the cultural mandate. In a book titled Folkways, Professor William Sumner writes, the folkways are the right ways to satisfy all interests because they are traditional and exist in fact. In the folkway, whatever is right. This is because they are traditional and therefore contain in themselves the authority of the ancestral ghosts. We may feel this way about Tagaloa because he is traditional, or perhaps his name, Endless Freedom, expresses a desire to create our own story and God. But aren't we mistaking an ultimate reality with our idea of the same?
What is this, Sabai?
That is a picture of a basket.
No. That is a picture of a basket. This is a basket. All together. What is this?
That is a picture of a basket.
Not all religions are equally true, nor do they point to the same destination. Arthur Timothy Demi observes, a religion with some truth does not legitimize the entire religion. So who is Tagaloa? The most plausible answer given the evidence is, he was a man elevated to God status and worshipped as a god, much like Tamawhainga. Support comes from Tuiatua himself. He writes Samoan religion posits a thesis that places Tagaloa as ancestor. Styles of ancestor worship may vary from culture to culture. Some recognize demigods, others didn't. A few of these gods or immortals, Pody Hodge noted, were crossovers with other cultures. What made them immortal? It was usually their age. They outlived everyone else. In the next documentary, we'll look at cultural Christianity and ask the question, do Samoans really believe Mata Niufea Ngai Maleata is their greatest style?
what is the ua mea ua ai umale tofioa ana le malai I maunga ua faa soa ae o pula siali ini we siali I olotuma ole maa ua la foa ina e tufunga I lata mea na maua ai au palunga.